Hello everyone, D Square here with another comic review and breakdown. This time it's Uncanny X-Men Annual number 1. This is not part of an overall storyline, but rather a one-off, just like most other annual comics. But boy, it's quite the one-off. This issue shows you the who, how, and why of the circumstances surrounding Scott Summers' resurrection. For those of you that don't know, Scott Summers is of course otherwise known as Cyclops. Out of the big three recent X-Men resurrections, this one definitely makes the most sense. This comic not only takes you through Cyclops' resurrection, but also realigns the character and gives him new purpose. The last we saw of Cyclops, he had just died from Terrigen Mist poison. He was basically considered a villain and regarded as a mutant terrorist. His character became more of a soldier than the Boy Scout that we all knew. Mutant kind faced extinction from multiple angles, and Cyclops was the mutant leader, so he sort of went off the deep end, and I totally understand why and understood his position. Thankfully, this issue shows that he is more like the old Cyclops, and has once again taken on the mantle of the leader of the X-Men. Cyclops is the focus here, but we also learn a great deal about Cable and his motivations. As some of you might know, an older version of Cable was just assassinated, and this young version knows a lot about that. It is cool to see father and son together in conversation about the events that led up to this moment. I, for one, am not a Cyclops fan, but at the same time, when I think of the X-Men, Cyclops is always in the picture. I loved this comic. I'm excited to see what comes next, which an annual comic does not normally make me think that way. Kudos to Ed Brisson for some great writing here. This comic is great, and I would encourage any X-Men fan to buy it. If you're not an X-Men fan or not versed in the strange origins of Cable, you might want to pass, as this might leave your head spinning. Alright, comic fans, well, stick around as I now break down the story of Uncanny X-Men Annual number 1. Enjoy. When a young Cable came to the present to preserve the time stream by sending the time-displaced original 5 X-Men back to the past, he killed his older self in cold blood. In secret, young Cable was allied with none other than the mysteriously revived Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Cyclops arises from his grave. He is revived, but completely unaware of how. We flash back to a time when Scott Summers is enjoying his walk through a college campus, when suddenly a nearby science lab is attacked by a giant robot. It turns out that this giant robot is being controlled, that is on a helmet being worn by a bald guy who is currently seeking some sort of revenge. Cyclops is able to incapacitate the man and his giant robot easily. A man named Paul Doig thanks Cyclops for saving him. He explains that he is very grateful and wishes he could help Cyclops because his wife is expecting and he needs to be there for his wife and child, so he's very grateful that Cyclops saved him. 10 years later, Cable appears in Paul Doig's kitchen. Cable asks for Paul's help in helping the man who saved Paul's life. Cable explains that he needs Paul to create/repair and miniaturize the Phoenix cage that he brought. This is from when Tony Stark unsuccessfully tried to cage the Phoenix. It turns out that Paul is the top of his class at MIT and is the right man for the job. Cable tells Paul that he will be back in 2 years to retrieve the item. Cable then body slides away in a bright light. Cable does just as he says and comes back in 2 years to find that Paul has successfully miniaturized the Phoenix cage. Cable then teleports him and Paul to the time and location of Cyclops' first death from the Mpox and the Terrigen Mist. He surgically inserts the Phoenix cage into Cyclops' body. It seems that this small Phoenix cage was able to capture some of the Phoenix power from the time that the Phoenix had revived Cyclops for just a few moments in order to convince Jean Grey to take on the Phoenix as host once again. It seems that it was able to capture enough energy to revive Cyclops if someone activated the cage. Cable, of course, is the one that activates the device and revives Cyclops. Cable meets Cyclops and he climbs out of his grave. Cable welcomes back his dad. Cyclops is of course confused, so Cable takes Cyclops back to one of his safe houses. Cable explains everything, as well as Cyclops and Paul share mutual admiration for each other as men who saved each other's lives. Cyclops reveals that he is aware that Cable sent the time-displaced Cyclops along with the rest of the time-displaced X-Men back to their timeline. He explains that he knows this because, for some reason, he has the time-displaced Cyclops' memories. He also reveals that he knows that Cable killed his older self and questions him on this. Cable states that he did not kill the older Cable. He retired an older, less effective version of himself. He continues to say that the older Cable was screwing up and he should not have let the time-displaced X-Men stay in this timeline because that could have resulted in destroying entire futures. Preventing those possibilities is his job. He keeps the timeline in order. Cyclops retorts, pointing to the fact that he is no longer dead. Why bring him back if Cable's job is to protect the timeline? Cable explains, because it just wasn't right. Cyclops was their leader, their hope. He couldn't let that be the end. Cyclops comes to an understanding with Cable's reasoning. Cyclops says that he cannot stay here with Cable and needs to go. Cable agrees, but informs Cyclops that he has a choice. Cable informs Cyclops that he has to choose between aiding the X-Men in their final battle with Nate Gray the X-Man. Oh, and by the way, if he doesn't, the X-Men will be no more. Or saving Paul and his family from a madman looking for revenge against him for what happened 10 years ago. Cyclops deduces that Cable arranged all this. Cyclops is angry and questions Cable on why he would set all this up. Cable tells Cyclops that he has to know what type of man came back from the grave. Cyclops, of course, chooses to save Paul and his family. Cyclops and Cable visit a beach in British Columbia. This is the battlefield between the X-Men and the X-Man. This is the site that the X-Men disappeared from. Cyclops contemplates his actions and how he became a monster and put his species above others. He was wrong, and now they were all gone. Cable asks him, "What are you going to do about it?" To which Cyclops responds, "I'm going to find the X-Men and set it right." Well, there you have it, X-Men Annual number 1, Uncanny X-Men Annual number 1, rather, and which is very interesting because it tells the interesting story of Cyclops' resurrection. Again, like I said, it sets Cable up, so Cable is basically new and shiny now, and so there's a new dynamic there. Father and son working together, which seems to me like a pretty cool payoff, seeing their tragic histories, and for now them to be father and son, healthy and alive, working together for the greater good is an awesome setup. And annual issues, at least when it comes to X-Men, or ones that I remember, they're not really this cool. They're usually, like last year was like Kitty Pryde and Rachel Summers went to like a baby shower over in England for Megan and Captain Britain. Things like that. So they're not usually this impactful. So I really, really enjoyed this. Again, not my favorite characters, but essential characters. And I like the fact that they're basically reset and ready to go, ready for us to follow and enjoy. So I hope everyone enjoyed this along with me. Thank you so much. If you're just now coming into my channel, please give me a subscribe and like. I would be ever so grateful. I'm a very small channel and really need help growing. And of course, I would always enjoy interacting with you down in the comments. So if you want to comment, please feel free to do so. I am usually on top of that. Thank you all again. Have a great day.